everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ellie if you've never been here before, and on this channel I upload whatever I want. Today is the 8th episode of my Tackling the TBR series. If you haven't been on my channel before, or you've never seen one of these videos done on my channel, then please go check out my playlist, especially the first episode where I go over all of my rules slash kind of my inspiration for this challenge as a whole. But essentially the goal is to tackle my physical TBR and get down to the bottom of it. I think I have 38 more books left out of 51, so we are making progress. It's time to pick the first book of this episode. I typically mention the books that I'm looking for, which are like more modern type books. There are some books that I really want to get to, like I want to complete my series over here, which is The Naturals. I have a lot of Emily Henry that I would like to get to. However, I'm also in the middle of doing another video that actually will come out before this one, which is me reading for 24 hours. Go check it out, it'll be linked up here. In that video, I'm at a point where I need an audiobook. So I'm kind of hoping that whatever book I get next, I'm willing to listen to the audiobook for. So you guys will have already seen what I get if you watched that video for my first pick. We'll see, let's just do it. So I have all my titles in the Jellycat bag. There were 459 in here. I don't know how many are left. I obviously don't have 459 books. It's a whole thing. If you really want to know how all these slips got in here, then go check out my first episode. All right. I'm nervous. This makes me nervous every time. Let's do this one. Ooh.
The big one? It's Project Hail Mary, isn't it?
No, I wish it was, because I heard the audiobook for that is really good.
That's Harry Potter.
I just got The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. It has only 8 entries, which I'm surprised. Oh my goodness gracious. The fact that I thought I was gonna read this in like 4 days is crazy. Oh my gosh. 550 pages. I don't think this is gonna be my, I don't think this is gonna be my audiobook. Because I think I wanna like actually read this. Especially because it's like kind of mixed media in a way. It's time for me to read The Book Thief. I'm actually shook. I'm actually so shook. Okay, if you don't know what The Book Thief is about, where have you been? But this is The Book Thief, and I'm just gonna read the inside page because I think it's the blurb. But it says, it is 1939, Nazi Germany. The country is holding its breath. Death has never been busier and will become busier still. Liesel Meminger finds her life changed when she unearths a single object from the snow. It is the gravedigger's handbook, left there by accident at her brother's funeral, and it is her first act of book thievery. But these are dangerous times. When Liesel's foster family hides a Jewish man in their basement, Liesel's world is both opened and closed down. In superbly crafted prose that burns with intensity, award-winning author Marcus Zusak has given us one of the most enduring stories of our time. I feel like I'm kicking off 2025 with a bang because we got The Secret Life of Bees knocked out of the way. 5 stars. And I don't see this book being anything less than 5 stars. I've heard so much. This is actually, even though it's only been entered 8 times, this is one of those books that I have had since being in high school. Okay, first book of the episode. I just did an update for another video that I'm filming, which I think you guys will see before this one for sure. This book is putting me in a book slump. I have read 5 books so far in January. Today is the 20th, by the way. I've read 5 books and I read all of them within the first 2 weeks of January, and so I'm struggling with this one. I'm on the struggle bus with this. It's not that it's a bad book. I want to say that. I'm only 30 pages in. It's just I'm learning. I feel like I'm repeating myself from my last video as well, but I am learning that I'm kind of a mood reader, which isn't a good thing as someone who is trying to tackle their TBR, and so I'm doing that randomly. So it's possible that I'll pick a book that I'm just not in the mood for, And this is one of those chances. I haven't really been reading at all this weekend, and I just kind of feel like I'm forcing myself to read. I'm going to continue. I'm not going to DNF it yet. I just feel like this is one of those books that you can't just plop open and read a couple pages and immediately you're like into the book. This is like one that I have to use 110% of my brain for, and I don't have 110% of my brain available right now. And it's a lot to get into. The writing style is just a lot. The format is so different, and I think that's what makes this book popular in a way, is the format of the book. And the narrator, if you didn't know, or if I haven't mentioned, Death is the narrator in this book, and Death makes a lot of observations in a weird, like, bolded type font, and sometimes it includes a picture. Like, I keep randomly opening to this right here. It'll just have like an observation in a picture, and it's really hard to follow a lot of the times, and I don't think that's like a negative thing about the book. I just think for my mood right now, I'm not in the mood, but I'm gonna get it out of the way. And it's just upsetting me that it's taking this long. Please, if this is your favorite book, please don't take this as an issue with the book. It's really an issue with me right now. Ellie, maybe like a few weeks ago, would have picked this up and just like read it very quickly. But Ellie now, who just got finished reading 3 or 4 thrillers, it's a lot. I will update you guys when I'm further along. This video is taking me a lot longer to film than usual. I don't even know where to begin, okay? I have been reading The Book Thief for this video, obviously. I haven't updated you really at all. I'm on page 204. This book is going to take me a lot longer than I thought it would to read, so I'm really trying hard to make sure that I am reading in my free time and at night and keeping up with the routine of reading, because with the other books that I have been reading this month, I haven't had to do that. I really have just been reading because I want to desperately continue the story. It's not that that's not the case with this book. I do want to continue and just see where the author takes this story. I have seen the movie, but it's been so long, I remember nothing of the plot, so everything is a surprise to me. The content of it is very heavy, and I mean, the writing isn't heavy, but there are a few, like, it just is taking me a little bit to get into it, and then once I'm actually sitting and reading, I am reading for a while. But this is not the type of book that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see what happens next, because it's not like a page turner like that. Unlike the rest of the month, for this book, I'm having to really put reading into my routine to continue. And yeah, there's 550 pages in the book, so I calculated it. I have 346 pages left, which is a lot, because that, even that alone, is more than the pages of an entire book that I've been reading at least this month or recently. So this video has been pushed back so many days because I'm still on the first book of the video, and as you know, I do 2 books a video, so I'm really just gonna try to push through. I am enjoying it, and this is not a bad thing about the book. Not every book needs to be a page turner, bingeable book. It's just that that is what I have been reading this month, and so this was kind of a twist, I guess. It did take me a little bit to get into, because you need to really get used to the fact that it's being narrated by a presence, I guess. What would you call Death? What would Death be? It is being narrated by Death, and so in the beginning, it is a little bit harder, at least it was for me, to be fully engaged in what was going on. The whole time my brain was just trying to process the fact that it was being narrated by a concept. What is death? I don't know. Also, there are just like kind of like interruptions in each chapter of like an observation that Death is making. and it's done with like kind of just like bold font, and it just like separates the narration, the description, so it'll just be like kind of like, oh, alert, this is what I'm thinking, kind of. And I saw a review on Goodreads that someone just thought it was like over the top extra. I personally don't really mind. I actually, at first I was just kind of like, I don't mind it, but now that I've more further along in the book, I mean, I'm 200 pages in, I am liking those little interjections. I guess it's not an interruption, an interjection. I am liking them. I feel like they add to the depth, I guess. But also, one thing that's kind of cool about this book and the way that it's written is the author, through death, kind of foreshadows what is going to happen next. And I don't know, I just think that it's a cool way of foreshadowing through those little observations. Because really, death has already experienced all of this and seen all of this, and so they're telling a story that happened in the past. But also, while he's writing about past experience, he's like, oh, and we'll get back to that later, you know, but in a more intellectual way, I guess. So those are my thoughts, and I'm interested to see where the story goes. Guys, it is actually still pretty early. It's barely 7:07. I don't know if you can see that or if it will choose to focus on my phone. Oh, you could kind of see it as my phone was as my screen was shutting off. But I've been up since 5 this morning. I am not picking up a job today, so with that, I am trying to use my time wisely. I have about 5 or maybe even 6 hours until I'm going to leave to go grocery shopping. I haven't done any part of my like morning routine yet, or like my workouts, getting ready for the day or anything. I literally woke up. I did some of my morning routine. I fed my dog and my cats. I said goodbye to my husband, to like made the bed and things, but like very little things. And then I sat here. Oh, actually, it snowed outside last night and this morning. So I made my first hot latte in probably like, it's actually been a very long time, because I started drinking iced coffees in the summer. Like my routine every day was to make just a hot latte, and I would take it to school. And then when it got super hot outside, I was like, I bet an iced latte would slap right now. And then I never went back, even through the fall and the winter. But with the snow on the ground, it literally has not snowed really at all this winter. Like, it's done little light dustings, which last night was kind of a little light dusting too, but it really hasn't snowed. So I just felt like it was fitting, and I used my library card mug that I hardly ever use, but I thought it was fitting for this video. Anyway, so I just sat here and I've been drinking my latte and reading. So I do want to give an update, maybe kind of like a last update before I finish the book. I'm sure I've mentioned this a lot, but this book is 550 pages. Last night before I went to bed, I was on page 300. Yesterday I was on page like 318, and now I'm on page 418, like exactly 100 pages. So I have about 130 pages left of the book, which is like a little over 2 hours of reading if each page was a full page and if there was no like pictures or anything. There are a lot of pages, first of all, that have like kind of like a table of contents of sorts of each part. I think I'm on part 8. And then it has all the different chapter titles. So those do take up some space. I'm actually just gonna show you the first one. There's like a little bolded point where Death will have an observation and will like just say like, oh, by the way, this is what I think is gonna happen. Or there's also a lot of foreshadowing, which I think in my review of this book I will talk about. I don't wanna just sit here and talk forever and ever about my thoughts, because I think I've talked a lot about this book. I don't know yet. I haven't looked at my footage yet or how much footage I have, but I do kind of feel that way. And if I don't talk about it now, I know I will talk about it later. I'm just gonna really try to focus on finishing this book today and starting my next book for this episode, because it's just been long enough. And also I'm just kind of ready to move on. That might be a little bit of foreshadowing on my end on how I'm feeling about this, but I might read, maybe I'll try to get to a certain point. Maybe I'll try to get to page 550, or let's say 552, because that's the start of the next chapter. So I might read this much more in this sitting, so about like 45 pages, and then I'll pause so that way I have just 100 pages or less, and then I might actually like do my routine of getting ready, because I still need to do my workout and things like that, and the longer I push that off, I won't do it. So anyways, I think that's just the plan. I'm not sure if I'm going to update you between. I might just like really try to push to finish this. I finished it. I have so many thoughts. I talked out all of my thoughts with my husband when he was home for lunch, and I think that it really helped because I'll be able to articulate my thoughts when it's time to review them. But I'm gonna just pick my next book and kind of give myself some time to think on this before I explain everything and even like rate it on Goodreads. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of time. I thought I was going to pick my next book based off of mood reading vibes, but I have no idea what to pick, so I'm just gonna pick out of the Jellycat bag. So here we are. The only hope that I have is actually that it's not The Naturals, which I know is not something that you probably thought I was going to say. And I hope that it's not a very thick book, because I would like to finish this next book very soon. And I guess whatever does come out, that it is something that is available on audio. I have one, but it kind of feels thick. The Alex Cross series. That actually works. This is kind of full circle, because the first time I pulled this prompt, it was the first book. Well, not the first book, but one of the books I have. Let me grab it. It's actually one of my mass market paperback books, which works because I'm trying to dwindle these down. And I can tell you right now, I'm probably not going to keep this. It is a cool cover though. Like, it's reflective. It's literally just like this chrome background with a really cool color of blue, but it's a very interesting cover. This series was entered 23 times, and actually I believe I only have 2 of them, so this is going to be the last one in the series that I read. I've only read 2. This is one of those instances where I was like, oh, books for $1, let me grab everything, and now I have a bunch of random James Pattersons. But I am actually not necessarily excited for this, but I'm happy with this because I can definitely listen to the audiobook. When I read the first one, I also borrowed the ebook on Libby so I could read on my iPad, so that's gonna be nice. So I'm hoping there's an audiobook. There was for Roses Are Red, which is the one that comes before this. Anyways, this book was published, at least this edition was published in 2001. So the same age as me. But let me give you a little brief synopsis, and then I actually need to go, so I'm gonna start the audiobook. Hopefully it's ready as soon as I get in the car. But let's see what this is about. DC detective Alex Cross has seen a lot of crime scenes, but even he is appalled by the gruesome murders of 2 joggers in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. Killings that look more like the work of savage beasts than humans. Local police are horrified, and even the FBI is baffled. Then, as Cross is called in to take on the case, the carnage takes off, leaving a trail of bodies across America and sweeping him to Savannah, Las Vegas, New Orleans, Los Angeles, as his nemesis, the merciless criminal known as the Mastermind, stalks him, taunts him, and once again threatens everything he holds dear. I will say, from what I remember, the first book, yes, the first book ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Like, his partner, this is a spoiler, but I doubt anyone's actually reading these, I'm so sorry. But his partner in like the investigation was killed at the end by the Mastermind, and then the whole case wasn't solved, I'm pretty sure. Why is there a Alex Cross word puzzle? Alex Cross word puzzle, because his name's Alex Cross in the back. I don't know, but this is a mass market paperback, so the pages are not, there's a lot of pages, it's thick, but they're also very short. So there's 391 pages in this. So I'm ready to just look up the audiobook and start this in the car. I'll check in with you when I have made a little bit of progress. Hi guys, update. I did listen to this a little bit on my car ride, I think I listened to about 40 minutes of it. So I am on page 37, which is chapter 11. And I could have listened to more, but I literally paused because it just talked about the weirdest thing right now. But I wanted to show you, I'm using this bookmark that I made myself, and it's like a holographic chrome, and I just thought it matched the cover. Anyways, I'm about to start making dinner, but before I do, I did want to do a quick check-in because this book is so weird. I mean, it's not the book is weird, but I feel like I had this same thought when I read Roses Are Red, the book that comes right before this, because the way that James Patterson writes the villains, I guess, in this story, like the bad guys, the criminals, he gives them a backstory, and the backstory for the criminals, or at least I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of the criminals, not the mastermind, but the people behind, the people that work for the mastermind. The backstory that he gave them so far is like insane. I literally paused it after the last chapter, chapter 10, because I literally was like, what? Like, I'm pretty sure like while driving I made that face like, you're joking. So I paused it because I was like, I don't want to like listen to more and then have to respond to that and then not respond to what I wanted to respond to. First of all, on the cover, I thought it was a little weird that there was this like cat type animal, but it's a tiger, and that comes into the story. I'm just gonna spoil it. I don't even think this is a spoiler because I'm not even like 10% of the way through, but I'm just gonna spoil this book because I doubt anybody wants to read this. They find these dead bodies, okay? And through like medical examination and all of that stuff, they find out that the people were like mauled by a tiger, but the tiger didn't eat them. So it made them come to the conclusion that it's a trained tiger. So someone with the tiger is killing people with the help of the tiger. The next chapter after that is like a little description on the killers. And it's these two brothers that grew up on a, like, what is it called? A commune? Yeah, they grew up in a commune, and their parents were like hippies. These are the words used by James Patterson, okay? Experimenters, hippies, freedom lovers, massive drug takers is what James Patterson says, okay? And they raised their sons to believe that anyone outside of the commune is evil, and that not like, it's just straight up dangerous, evil, wrong, okay? And the mom taught them that, I don't even know how to say this. The mom taught them that they could commit the act with anyone. So they grew up committing the act with her and with their dad and pretty much everyone else in the commune. And then one day, their like freedom, their morals got the best of them, I guess, and they got like arrested for like possession of whatever, and then they basically assaulted the cops, so then it became like assault charges and they were placed in juvie and blah 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 blah. And that's kind of like how the chapter ended. I just feel like that's a crazy backstory. Did we need all the details? I don't know. But the difference between The Book Thief and this is just like appalling. It's actually funny. I think I'm gonna continue listening to this in my AirPods while I make dinner, just so I can make some progress, because it's only an 8-hour audiobook, so I can easily accomplish that in the morning when I'm getting ready, you know, like on my drives and things like that, as long as I stick to it. I have to use my time wisely, so I'm gonna listen to my audiobook while I make dinner. Hi guys, I don't know how much I've updated really at all, but I wanted to give an update since I am now about 50% of the way through. I'm on chapter 51, which is page 183. I have been listening to the audiobook. I think I read like one chapter of this physically while I was at work one day, but then I was just like, you know what, I would just rather listen to the audiobook. So it is going by pretty fast, especially because now I'm at the point where I can listen to the audiobook in 2x speed. So I have 4 hours and 17 minutes left, but on 2x speed it'll take me a little over 2 hours to listen to it. So I think I'm going to listen to it right now while I update my reading journal. I'm going to do that because I really want to finish this book today. But I do have thoughts before I continue, because I do want to update you before I just finish the book and not tell you anything. What I've learned, especially in this book, I feel like it's similar to the book before it, Roses Are Red, but it's also so different. I feel like the first one was a lot more fast-paced and it gave me kind of like a cat and mouse vibe, being so close to catch the killer but also being so far at the same time, you know? And that back and forth like piece of the plot and the pacing, it was thrilling, I would say. But in this one, I'm not getting the same vibe. I think it's meant to be that way. I think it's trying to be that way. But the perspectives from the killers themselves, I hate those chapters. I really do. I know there's sick people out there and that this is just like an example of some of the stuff that weirdos people do that they're into, but why do we need to get all the details? Why are we getting all the details? And I was explaining this to my husband when I first started the book. So when I was literally like, when I was like 10 chapters in, the last time I updated you guys, even at that point, when I was talking to my husband about it, I was just like, I just feel like it's just unnecessary, like how descriptive it is. Because not only is it descriptive, but like we just keep going back to it, you know? And I'll explain exactly what I'm talking about in a second, but my husband was like, he's just writing just to write. And I feel like that was perfect. Like, I felt like James Patterson was just writing and adding details just because he could. Like at this point, I feel like we're getting more from the other perspectives. So like the criminals, and there's multiple. I feel like we're getting more from their life than we are from the main character, Alex Cross, which this whole series revolves around Alex Cross, like the detective. So I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I understand that we need some of that to be able to build like a profile of like who we're looking for, but this is like more than some, and it sucks because I'm like, I already don't like that perspective, and now that's the majority of the story that I'm getting. So basically there's a lot going on, okay? They keep coming across these bodies, okay, and they're trying to figure out who done it, you know, like they're detectives. But they find out that, I think I mentioned this already, but they find out that there's like a tiger involved. These are not human. Did I mention this? I have no idea. But they're like, oh, expert is like, this is a tiger bite. This is not a human teeth bite. And so they're looking into that and like who exactly would be skilled enough to train a tiger, who would have access to a tiger. This is also the United States, like this is San Francisco. Like what circles is this person running in? What events are they going to? Like they're trying to build a profile. Later on, we find out that these people are actually, it's not a tiger bite, but it's a person with enhanced. It's a person like with enhanced features. So like they get fangs done. Like either their teeth are sharpened into fangs or they get like veneers of sort. So that way it can like mimic a bite. And we're going back and forth between the detectives investigating and interviewing people who are claiming to be vampires, and who are also, those people that are claiming to be vampires are like talking badly about people who are not real vampires, but they're claiming to be, you know? And so it's like, guys, like it's just a bunch of, how do I say this lightly, mentally ill people, you know? Like that's just kind of the vibe it's getting. But then we're getting other perspectives, which there's only one perspective in this book that's written in first person, and that's Alex Cross, the detective. So whenever the person is saying like, I did this, I did that, we blah blah blah, that's the detective. And then it will switch to the mastermind, and that's in third person, I believe. But I know for sure when it gets to William and Michael are two of the bad guys, I guess, and they are vampires, at least according to them. It's not like, I don't know, I haven't figured out yet if they're like actually vampires and this is like a fantasy paranormal type thing, or if they're just claiming to be vampires. I really don't know. I haven't put my finger on it. I don't think I've read enough of the series to know if there are elements like that in the series throughout, and so these guys really are vampires, or if they're just claiming to be vampires and it's just adding to the lore of like their motive behind killing people, and also their like MO, you know? I still haven't come across that. I'm leaning more towards it's just part of the plot, like they're not actually vampires. It's just it just not explains, but it just goes well with what we've already learned about them. We keep getting scenes of them, and anytime that it's like their scene, it's written in third person too, so it'll say William and Michael. So it is a little bit hard to follow, except I will say one thing about the audiobook, they do have at least 2 different narrators. So the narrator for Alex Cross is different from the narrator who narrates every other perspective, which I think is nice because it's easier to follow since the story changes to different characters' perspectives so much, you know? So anyways, I will say that's a plus for me. But anyways, we're getting these glimpses into what William and Michael are doing, and it's always talking about them feeding. I feel like we could have got a glimpse at that and then never really had to bring it up again. Like, I don't know, I just feel like it's not, I mean, I don't know the end of the story, so maybe it really is adding to the story and building up to something, but I just feel like we see too much of them. Like, we see too many episodes in a way of them finding victims to feed. I don't know if that's where we're gonna get the details to later solve the mystery, like, oh yeah, when they did this, but I really don't see it going that way so far. So I'm just kind of like, oh, here we go again. And it's like into way too much detail. Like, we do not need to know what you guys did before you fed. We don't. We know you're disgusting. We're just gonna assume you did something that you shouldn't have done, you know? But that's not the way it's going. We don't have to assume. We're being told. We're being forced to read or listen to the details. I finished 2 chunky books and I'm ready to talk about them. The first book I read in this episode was The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This one took me a really, really long time to read, which is why you are seeing this video a lot later than it was supposed to come out. I ended up rating The Book Thief 3 stars, which honestly hurts my heart because I feel like I'm missing out on something that other people got to experience or came to love. And it took me a little bit to actually rate this book. The whole time I had no idea what I was going to rate it because I just kept thinking about what other people thought about this book and how that was different from what I thought. But if you don't follow me on Goodreads, I already did post a pretty long review. I guess it's not super long, but it's long for me. So you may have already read it if you have, but if you haven't, my Goodreads is linked below. But I am gonna actually refer to my Goodreads because I want to make sure that I'm getting everything across. And yeah, I just feel like what I said in my review on Goodreads was concise enough, but also it got everything I wanted to say out. So the first thing I want to say is I am glad I read this book. I am glad that it is finally read and off of my physical TBR. It's a book that I've owned for a really, really long time, and I'm glad that it was finally read. And I don't regret reading it. There wasn't really a point in time where I wanted to DNF it. Even when I wasn't enjoying it as much as I thought I was, it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't having a good time. And I don't want to really say that because I feel like the purpose of the story isn't for people to have a good time. But I think even with really sad books or really thought-provoking, deep books, people still have a good reading experience while reading them. I don't want to come across as like I regret picking this book up or I regret powering through because it was a 550 page book, and that's a lot. That's a lot to push through. There were moments that I enjoyed more than others. There were some moments that felt unnecessary, but I do think that the book is worth reading if you haven't read it yet. More than what it was worth reading, I think it was a story worth writing. I think that it was a very unique concept. I mean, I read a lot of reviews that were similar to mine, and I read a lot of reviews from people that rated it 5 stars, and I could see where they're coming from. But of course, because I didn't enjoy it as much as other people, I resonated a lot more with reviews that were similar ratings to mine. A lot of people that rated it 3 stars or lower, like I did, they had the same complaint. They felt like the uniqueness of the narrator was coming off as like quirky, or that it wasn't executed well, or that it was just, I don't know, there's a word that people use that it's not coming to mind. I actually disagree with that. I think that the story being narrated by Death and the way that it was done was actually one of the good things, the things that I enjoyed about the book. There were cases, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this, but there were cases where Death had interjections, and he would just be like, he would make observations, and there were parts that I really, really liked when Death did that. But in some places, I felt like it would have been better left out. I didn't hate all of them. I actually enjoyed most of the interjections, but there were instances where I think the story, the plot, the impact would have benefited from not having those interjections there. A lot of the interjections were like really constant foreshadowing of things that were going to happen, and in my opinion, it really took away from the impact that those scenes or those situations in the book could have had on me and my reading experience. I will say this book is definitely more character-based than plot-based, and I think that that's something I haven't experienced a lot in books. I think a lot of the books I read just happen to be plot-based. It's not necessarily something that I seek out all of the time. I think it just is like kind of a coincidence. It's just something that happens. And because I don't have a lot of experience with books that are more character-based than plot-based, I don't want to put off all books that are more character-based than plot-based, because I just really don't have a solid opinion yet, or a fair opinion. But I think that the fact that it's character-based, coupled up with the fact that it's a 550 page book, it just didn't really sit well with me. I wasn't as engaged. I took a really long time to read it because it just felt like there was nothing happening. With that being said, I do feel like the characters in this book were very, very fleshed out, and that I knew everything about them. Honestly, even though my rating was on the lower end, like a 3 stars is middle of the road, but for this book it feels very low. Even though my rating was only a 3 stars, and typically books that are rated 3 stars are just kind of forgettable and I never really think about them again, I think I will think about these characters for a really long time. Liesel and Rudy and Hans and Rosa and Max, like they all were very, very fleshed out characters. Even like the antagonists of the story, they were like fleshed out. Like you just knew so much about them, and I think that was a very good thing. But I feel like it would have been so much better if the characters were that strong with a just as strong plot. But because there really was such a huge emphasis on the characters, which isn't a bad thing, but because of that there was not a really strong plot, and I just felt like, honestly, I felt like there was no climax to the story. I felt like we didn't build up to anything. The pacing just stayed the same throughout, and it felt very, very slow. And I feel like that kind of works for the idea behind the story. Like the years of the Holocaust, the years of World War II were very, very long, gruesome years. But for a like fictional novel, yes, it's set in a real historical time, but because the story itself is a work of fiction, I feel like it would have really benefited from some type of climax to the story. Anyways, the last thing I wrote in my review for this, I'm just gonna read it verbatim, but I said, I think it was a story worth writing. I mean, there's a reason why it's a 5-star read for millions of people. So I'm sad that it wasn't for me, because I just feel like that sums up everything. with all of that being said, this book is going to be an unhaul. It is listed on my pangobooks as of right now, but if it isn't bought within the near future, especially as temperatures begin to rise, I mean, that's not really the case here because we are finally having our first dumping of snow yesterday and today this winter. But as the temperatures begin to rise and the spring begins to come, I do want to do a big unhaul and go to Little Free Libraries and make another one of those videos. So until then, this book will sit on my pangobooks unless it's bought, but it is going to be an unhaul. I just think a younger audience or someone who will love it will pick it up, and it's better that it's in their hands than mine, just collecting dust. The second book I read in this episode was Violets Are Blue by James Patterson. As I mentioned at the beginning of this segment where I started reading this book, this is a installment in the Alex Cross series, which is actually becoming like an adaptation on, I think it's Amazon Prime. Crazy. I actually do want to watch it just because I love like the mystery element and the fact that I know a little bit about the series, but not necessarily because I'm loving the series or that I will ever really continue it. This is actually the 7th book in the series. I read the 6th book because for some reason I only owned the 6th and 7th book in my first episode of this series, the Tackling the TBR series. So it was nice actually that I got this because the 6th book ended on a really crazy cliffhanger without going into the whole plot of the series or just the 2 books as a whole. There's a criminal called the Mastermind. His identity has not been revealed, but they're basically tracking him all along the 6th book, which is Roses Are Red, and he ends up killing one of the detectives that got really close to the main character, Alex Cross, and the story just kind of ends that way. In this book, I thought that's what we were going to follow the whole time, which it was a plot line throughout, but in my opinion, it felt a lot like a subplot. And it was just kind of bugging me because that was the plot I cared more about than the second plot that came into the story. I'm just gonna wrap it up. In case you guys were wondering, I doubt any of you are gonna read this, as I've mentioned like 6 times in this video already. Luckily, at the end, this wrapped up in a nice pretty bow, and I do not feel the need to continue the series or go back and read any point in the series. So I'm very, very happy that the Alex Cross series is now going to be off my shelves. I'm very, very glad that the Mastermind was revealed and put in custody, and I will say that whole plot line, even it was a subplot, which just makes me annoyed, but also it was so predictable, and I felt like James Patterson kept dropping hints, and I wish he didn't. I wish we could just figure it out on our own. There was parts where Alex, the main character, would be like, this person's acting really weird. I'm gonna have to come back to that later. Like literally verbatim, that's what he said, I'm pretty sure, in one of the chapters. He was like, how does he know that? Like, we could have been thinking that on our own. We could have been like, wait, how does he know that? We don't need you to say that, you know? Also, they introduced a plot, I mentioned it when I first picked up this book, about people being vampires, and I did come to the conclusion that they're just people that need help, and they do really believe they're vampires. Obviously they're not. So this is like set in the real world. It's not a fantasy book, but I just felt like that plot took on more of the story, or took up more space in the story than the plot of the Mastermind, which I feel like most of us would have cared about more, because the last book ended on a cliffhanger because of the Mastermind, you know? James Patterson is James Patterson. I ended up rating this book 2 stars. I enjoyed it a little bit, at least, and I mean, enough to say I continued with the story. I didn't DNF it. I pretty much binged the audiobook within 2 days, most of it today. I didn't really like lose myself in the story in a confusing manner. I didn't really like get lost is what I mean. But I did actually kind of lose myself in terms of like being super engaged in the story and wanting to know what happened. But I feel like too many details were given, and it wasn't super enjoyable that like I can compare to other 3 stars or any rating higher, basically. My camera's gonna die. I really need to wrap this up. These are the 2 books that I read in this episode. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you like me, then subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. leave a comment if you'd like, and I'll see you guys in my next video, but especially my next episode. Bye!